One of the keys to reducing the threat of climate change is taking CO2 out of the air. This technology is still in early stages of development, but one place where it's taking hold is in Iceland, where I am this week, believe it or not. The company that's doing it is also producing and selling electricity in Iceland, including using geothermal energy. How are they doing this? Today we're going to find out from the woman heading up that company at the forefront of this effort. Welcome to Electric Ladies Podcast, formerly known as Green Connections Radio. We bring you insights and tips from remarkably innovative women about corporate responsibility, energy, and sustainability-related issues. I'm your host, Joan Michelson. We talk about innovation, leadership, technologies, and careers, always bringing a new perspective. Find us anywhere you like to listen to podcasts, on our website, electricladiespodcast.com, and through my Forbes blog as well. And please pass it on to your friends. If you're struggling with your own career, especially in this crazy time, please reach out to me on Twitter and let me know. We can help you no matter what industry you're in. Welcome to Iceland, where I've been the past week exploring their green energy and transition to 100% renewable energy. Yep, you heard me correctly. The entire country is transitioning to net zero. And believe it or not, they're well on their way because they started, decades ago, before any other country was really focused on it. One of the companies I visited on this fascinating journey is called OnPower, which I understand is a subsidiary of Reykjavik Energy. OnPower is the anchor to a very cool hub of entities I visited that are all collaborating together in Reykjavik. Briefly stated, and I'm sure she'll correct me if I got this wrong, this cluster is leveraging geothermal power to produce clean power, highly nutritious natural food products, and more, and carbon removal. Let's find out how they're doing all this. I'd like you to meet, I'm going to try this name, so she'll correct me. Berglind Olafsdottir, she calls herself Begga, which is much easier for me to manage, the CEO of OnPower. Prior to joining OnPower in 2017, she was at the Icelandic Power Company, where she worked in business development, and she also worked at Decode Genetics. Now, that's a combination I'd like to know more about. She earned her bachelor's and master's degrees in molecular biology from the University of Iceland and an MBA from IESE in Barcelona, as they say, one of my favorite cities. So please join me in welcoming Begga to Electric Ladies Podcast. Welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
You're welcome. So I had, as I said in the introduction, I had the privilege of touring the OnPower facility this week as part of my crash course in green energy in Iceland. And I am truly fascinated by what you're doing there and by the whole concept of it. So first, tell us about OnPower and its portfolio of energy initiatives.
Yes, so at OnPower we operate 3 power plants, one of which you visited yesterday, which is our largest power plant. And combined, we produce just under 20% of the energy produced in Iceland. So we're the second largest energy company. Not that largest is always better, definitely not. But we are the largest geothermal company in Iceland. And we also, our geothermal power plants, they are what is called combined heat and power, which means that we also produce hot water. And we produce around 50% of the hot water used in the Reykjavik area.
Wow.
And this we have been doing for a few decades in total. Before 2014, OnPower didn't exist because it was a part of Reykjavik Energy. There was only one company, Reykjavik Energy, doing all the things that Reykjavik Energy and 4 daughter companies are now doing. But in 2014, OnPower was created, and we own and operate the power plants with this production. And we have, one of the things that we did that you mentioned in the beginning of the podcast was the fact that we are removing carbon from our operations. So geothermal energy and all the energy that is produced in Iceland, it is renewable. And one of the things that means is that there are low emissions associated with the production. From our operations, there's around 7 grams of CO2 per produced kilowatt hour, compared to 800 if you produce the electricity using coal.
Wow. So say that again. So it's about 7% per versus
7 grams versus 800 grams. So, but 7 grams are still emissions.
Yeah.
So we have made a decision of not using this dangerous excuse. It's so little, it doesn't really matter,
Every bit of carbon matters.
Yes, because everyone can point to someone, individual or company or country, that is emitting more. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't mean that you don't have to take responsibility for your emissions. Mm-hmm. And we have decided to do that a long time ago. And when the Reykjavik Energy Group was just one company, Reykjavik Energy, we started developing the technology that we use for getting rid of the CO2 emissions. That is called Carbfix, and I know you've also been getting to know more about.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yes, and we started using this method in 2014, and we've been operating a carbon removal station since then, mineralizing and removing from the atmosphere, indefinitely, just over 10,000 tons a year.
Wow.
And it has been going very well, and it is the pilot case for this. We are still the only company in the world using this technology, but that will, fortunately not be for very long, because another daughter company of Reykjavik Energy was founded around 2 years ago, with the purpose of spreading the Carbfix method to other countries and other companies.
Oh.
And they are, full force in doing that, a growing team at our sister company now, Carbfix. And we are now working with them to build a new facility at Hellisheiði that will allow us to mineralize all the emissions from that power plant. We think we can go down to 95%. Just because of technical constraints. And we plan to finalize that in 2025. We've taken the decision. We have financed it ourselves on power, and partly from a grant from the European Union. And that we will be operating that unit before end of 2025. So this will be the first geothermal power plant in the world to be, as close to zero as technically possible. And then we are preparing the same for our other geothermal power plant, which we are operating in the same area, around 14 kilometers away. It's a little bit smaller when it comes to electricity, but bigger when it comes to hot water. So we have a plan for that in 2030 to have all of our electricity production zero emissions, basically.
So many questions going through my head. First of all, what are you only removing CO2 from the energy that you're emitting, or are you also just taking it out of the air in general? Because that technology can be used to take CO2 out of the air anywhere in the world, I would think.
Yes. So ourselves, we are capturing the emissions from our production and mineralizing it with Carbfix. What we are doing in addition to that, to be an enabler for reduced CO2 emissions in general. Mm-hmm. So one thing is our operations, right. And then the other thing is how can we, as a company, as a responsible company, honestly, trying to figure out ways to be a part of the solution. Mm-hmm. How can we do that? And we're doing a few things. One of the things is related to what you mentioned. We are building up what we call the unpowered geothermal park, mm-hmm. next to the Hellisheiði power plant that you visited. Mm-hmm. the purpose of the geothermal park, it's threefold. It is to firstly to fully utilize the streams that are generated when you produce electricity and hot water using geothermal. There is water that has been discarded historically and is not used. And this basically, we as a world, we have to change. We have to use everything and create value out of, waste.
Every byproduct. Yeah, I think they called that brine when we were there.
Yes, exactly.
Glad I learned something while I was.
Yes, a quick learner. So it's to fully utilize the geothermal resource. It is to create value, both for us and for our customers in the geothermal park. And it's thirdly, it is to support and to enhance geothermally related innovation. So we have, create a platform for others, in companies, scientists, entrepreneurs to come and do experiments with the resources. And sometimes this leads to, nothing, failed experiment. Sometimes it leads to knowledge, perhaps a publication in a scientific paper. And sometimes it leads to something that, works and, will create value. And we have two examples of that, where companies, entrepreneurs have done experiments in a geothermal park. They have gone well, and these companies have gotten funding. Gotten funding for commercial operations in the geothermal park. And one of the companies is a direct air capture company that has developed technology to take the CO2 from the atmosphere itself, not from emissions. These are emissions, obviously, but they are in the atmosphere, and they extract them from the atmosphere using technology that they developed, and the company is called Climeworks. And then they are collaborating with Carbfix to mineralize it with the Carbfix method. So it's a collaboration between OnPower, Climeworks, and Carbfix.
That was the facility that I was at.
Yes. And next to that facility is another interesting company that is cultivating microalgae in the geothermal park. And they are using microalgae. It's basically a way of producing nutrients in a way that demands much less water and much less land for the production of nutrients than with conventional, farming or agriculture. And it is likely that this will be a more important part of our nutrition in the future, because the population globally is growing, and everyone needs nutrition, and we are using so much of the earth's resources. We are at or beyond the limits that the planet has created. So many things have to change, and so one of the things is nutrition. So, and we are, I'm very proud of our customers in the geothermal park, and we are also proud of not welcoming all companies into the geothermal park.
Oh, you mean you've rejected some that wanted to join?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, when we started this a few years ago, we were like, okay, nobody's asking for this, but let's try. Let's try if we can make this happen and see if people want to come and be with us in fully utilizing the resource, having, operations that basically make the world, a little bit better. And
the proximity to all of it together, it just makes total sense.
Yes, yeah, it makes sense now, kind of, but also a lot of things have changed in the discussion and in the world, and now now there's basically 5 years ago there was not a line.
Now you have a queue, yeah.
Now there is a line, and we do so. We have conversations with people interested in coming into the geothermal park, and the first meeting is always about environmental impact in the on site, on location, because we are close to a water reserve area, and we don't want pollutants going into the environment. And then we take a discussion. Okay, if there are pollutants in this processes, how can we make sure that they do not enter outside of the building. So that is always a first conversation, and basically not all companies are suitable for a sensitive location like that. So yeah, it was a bit of a challenge first, to generate acceptance for the fact that not everyone is welcome.
Well, it's interesting because now the concept of multi-use facilities is very common everywhere in the world, and I can't help but think that so many places could learn from what you're doing. I mean, the proximity, but also the literal use of every byproduct for some, partnering with an organization that can use that component that is the byproduct. And the algae company was really fascinating. Talk about I noticed that you talked about the removing CO2 from the air, not just from your own emissions. And the World Resources Institute reports that, quote, to keep temperature rise within 1.5 Celsius as outlined in the Paris Agreement, and to prevent the worst impacts of climate change, the world needs to reach net zero carbon emissions by around mid-century, removing and storing as much carbon dioxide from the air as we put into it. Close quote. And so therefore, the work that you're doing in carbon removal is so critical. So talk about how you partnering with Carbfix on that, and how it's working out, what other organizations maybe can learn from that.
Well, I mean, from our approach to reducing emissions,
and from integrating the carbon removal component as well, as you said, it's really critical.
Yeah. It is really basically a matter of deciding to take responsibility for your emissions. The most difficult part probably is for most companies to take the decision of spending money on
the expense. Yeah. How does it work actually? And also, if you could, a lot of people don't really understand. In fact, I got a lesson in it myself this week, but how geothermal works itself. So if you could explain how geothermal energy works and also how carbon dioxide removal works.
Yes. So we live on this island that is, geologically active. And that is the reason for us having, heat under the ground. And we have, our eruptions now and then in different locations, and we have, we are used to that, and our infrastructure is built, in a resilient way because of, where we live and how the island is. But this means that we can drill holes into the ground to take steam and hot water from the ground, and the steam we use to generate the turbines in our power plant and to transform the energy in the steam, into electricity, and then we distribute the electricity basically onto the grid, and we sell it to, households and
the community.
Island. All of Iceland. And the hot water in the holes we use to heat up cold groundwater that we take also from the vicinity, and just distribute that to our sister company Veitur, that then take it to the homes and companies in the Reykjavik area. They don't distribute the water around the whole island because that doesn't make sense. It's more difficult to move water for long distances than electricity. And then the carbon removal, I don't know if you're speaking to Edda, who was the CEO of Carbfix, but this is, she describes this in a nice way, which is comparing it to a giant soda stream machine. So there's basically water, and you take the gas, the CO2 that is emitted, take it from the emissions, dissolve it in the water. So it's basically water with CO2. And that is, carbonated water, basically, literally. And then you pump it into the ground in holes that we need to drill. You see under defined parameters of pressure and conditions that have been, optimized in the development process, and then it becomes stone in 2 years. And this took, They started this, the scientists that are now working and operating Carbfix, they started this work in 2007.
Wow.
And we started operating our facility, the first one, in 2014. So it takes a long time. But now Carbfix, the company Carbfix, they are now on a mission to scale up. So because we need scale, if this is to have an impact, like globally, it has to be at a scale, which means that many companies need to do the same that we are doing. But we are very happy and proud to be an example of this can be done. This is how we can this is how it can be done, and share it, and we do that. And this is the mission of Carbfix, and a very important mission.
Yeah, this is why I wanted to talk to you so much, is because what you're doing is a model for other countries, really. I mean, I've kind of described Iceland as a bit of a pilot project for the rest of the world. I mean, it's a small island and only 350,000 people, and about the size of Kentucky, I've discovered. But clearly, it's what you're doing here can be scaled up, with the right investment and skills in other places. So do you think that this kind of business model that you've created with OnPower and with these collaborative business units of, sharing the byproducts of everything, because it's really interesting. It's not just that you're sharing real estate, like a use piece of real estate. You're actually sharing what each company does, what each organization does, and the byproducts, so that you're not, it's not just shipping the byproduct to someplace else to use it. It's literally on site. So was that something that OnPower just came up with? Where did you get the idea for that from? I mean, how did it come to be?
So you were describing, the circular thinking.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, this is,
On the property.
on the property, on the land.
Yeah. I mean, it's a circularity, but it's circularity in the same place. I mean, as you said, you're choosing partners that make sense.
Yeah. I mean, it is, if to be able to execute on the decision of enabling fuller, constantly fuller utilization of the resource streams, it doesn't really make sense to do it remotely. It makes much more sense to do it next to the plant, because that means that you need to the pipes and all the infrastructure is much less complicated and much less expensive.
And a lower carbon footprint, because you're not transporting anything.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So less production of material for everything. I mean, this is a development in the geothermal park, and we took the decision very early on that the optimal outcome of this a few years ago would be if as much companies in the geothermal park were using waste from others. And that is the end goal, and this will happen step by step.
So OnPower came up with this idea several years ago. That's great.
Yes. We decided that we wanted to develop the geothermal park, and then the circularity focus. I think it would be fair to say that it was strong in the beginning, but it has become stronger and stronger. And our next project or collaborative project with a client there that we are still preparing will be very interesting in this way, where we are actually operating the power plant in very close close operation with the client. So we are using streams that then they are using. So we are creating this value from the same resource twice.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
So rather than even just sending the byproduct next door, it's literally on site, sharing almost more operationally.
Yes, and it creates complications. It definitely does, but we think it's worth it, and it's something that we want to be a part of making happen.
So that's fascinating. Are there lessons for other countries in Iceland's transition to a net zero economy or 100% renewable economy that you've gleaned from your years in this industry? I mean, obviously Iceland is a small country, but what if you were going to advise other countries, what would you advise them?
Well, if we look at 2050 and our common goal there, relatively undisputed finally, we need to be carbon neutral by then. It's not a very long time, but I find it useful to split what we need to do in three parts. So first is CO2 emissions. So we need to reduce them, and we reduce them by producing energy using renewable ways instead of gray ways. And we also reduce them by capturing and storing, mineralizing. We do that by, getting rid of the fossil fuel from our cars, from the, shipping fleet, from the airplanes. So everything that has to do with reducing emissions, whatever ways that apply to each company or country, and the situation varies. And this is basically, we have a lot of technology there that is already developed. We have Carbfix, we have geothermal, we have hydro, we have solar, we have wind, we have other technology in development, obviously. But there's really we're not waiting for the technology, so it's better a matter of taking decision and financing. Which I'm not saying that is I'm not saying it's not challenging, but it's there.
But the technology is there.
Yes. So that is the first of the three. The second is this thing that we have been talking about, and is the circularity, which means that we have to change the way we think and how we operate and how we organize ourselves as society. And there are, fortunately, models that companies and countries can use. We don't have to, make them. We can develop them, and these are models like the circular economy, the donut economy. It's basically all are aiming for using less and less resources of the earth to, create value and maintain or increase quality of life. I find that in this discussion, a lot of people are afraid that this focus on circularity will decrease the quality of life. But that is not the case. It's a different approach. And of course, there will be changes, and the changes will be difficult for people and companies that need to change. But I think the answer to that is that the earlier you start, how you need to develop your country, your business, the better, instead of being a victim.
Well, yeah, I mean, we moved from horse and buggy to cars, and there were a lot of, yes, the cars pollute the air, but there were a lot of other benefits to having the car.
And the third is, so first is reduce CO2, second is circular thinking, and then the third is focus on innovation, which I think is absolutely necessary for us to focus extremely heavily on climate-related innovation. Because there are solutions and technologies that we can adapt, but the time is the clock is ticking, and the more focus we have on creating other better solutions that we couldn't even imagine now, that will help us to increase the chances that we reach the future that we have to reach by 2050. And I think everyone's path, company's path in this journey is different. It depends on what the company is doing. We are an energy company, so maybe the path is easier. But looking from the outside, but still, I don't think so really, because we could have taken the decision of saying we are fine, we are producing renewable electricity. You guys, you need to change. But we have not decided to do that, and then doing the things that I've discussed and also we are focusing on when we create services for our customers in Iceland. We are focusing on what can we do that will influence society in a good way when it comes to this. For example, the latest product we launched was a first ones in Iceland to launch home charging as a service. Because we saw that a lot of people were hesitant of buying an electric car because then they had to, investigate all the charging stations and figure out the technical details and whatnot, and it was an obstacle. So we decided to remove that, do our to try to remove the obstacle, and say, okay, we'll take care of, choosing the station, we'll own it, and you rent it from us. But it's
That's really creative, and I have my own story from when I was at Chrysler, by the way, about that. Before I let you go, I just want to ask you one thing and then get some advice from you. I mean, you're clearly, you talk about driving innovation, and one of the keys to innovation is having different people at the table, right, and different minds and different perspectives. And you're clearly a woman who's a leader in this industry and in male-dominated fields, obviously. So much of the energy sector is still dominated by white men. I see in your background that's an important value to you, and obviously you have a passion for innovation. What unique role do you think women can play in innovating, in creating these innovations, and in driving climate change related economics and policy, and whether it's energy or any other?
I mean, I think, it is extremely important that women are at the table, and you probably, and I certainly, and many, many other women have experienced the change that happens kind of in the atmosphere when more women are added to a male-dominated room. It's amazing to feel it. You have 14 people, one woman, then the second woman, it changes a little bit, and then you get the third woman, it changes everything. And a lot of us have experienced that extremely positive change. And I mean, I think it's the same in every sector. If you have different voices and opinions at the table, it makes the decisions better. Not only in terms of gender, but other things also, background. I mean, I'm a molecular biologist. I mean, who would have thought that I would be leading an energy company? I certainly would have thought that to be a crazy idea.
Well, in today's world, it makes sense, though, because it's molecular biology that's feeding into a lot of these things in many ways. I mean, it's that circularity concept, right?
Yeah, and I kind of feel that I've come full circle, because when I decided to study biology at university, more than 25 years ago, the plan was to go into ecology. And I was fascinated by that. But then I got more fascinated after I started to study by all the little things, the cells, and ended up working as a scientist for 5 years doing human genetics research. But still always interested in environment and sustainability and kind of the society based on such consumption has always kind of bothered me a little bit. And then somehow my career developed in this direction, and I've been now 10 years in the energy industry and 4 years leading on power, and with this heavy focus on basically ecology, the environment. Yeah. It was not something I would foresee, and that's also what makes it interesting, and makes basically things interesting now in society, because you learn something, and then things develop. It's much more movement and variety in our paths in general. It's not like it used to be 50 years ago. You studied this and you worked doing this, until you died.
Right, exactly. No, that's really good, and that's a perfect segue, because I'd like to get some career advice from you for mid-career women, like women who have at least 15 years of experience, roughly, and have an education and have experience. They kind of know what they're good at. And, you know, your point is so well taken that first, you have come full circle. You are doing ecology ultimately now. And you made a really good point about kind of using what you've learned from whatever your experiences are. What advice would you give to women who want to make money, want to advance in their career? You've become CEO of an energy company, which is an extraordinary accomplishment. What advice would you give to mid-career women who want to have the same kind of goals?
Yeah, I think, I mean, as women, we have a tendency of underestimating ourselves in general, I think. And I think my advice would be that if you're mid-career and you want to take a step up, in the corporate ladder, but then there's also a lot of other interesting ways of developing, that are very positive career changes. But I think that basically whatever you want, whether it's a step sideways or up or whatever, into another industry, I think it's important for women not to, discount their experience and the knowledge and try to, be a bit bold, if you're applying for something that is advertised, and don't not submit the application because you don't tick in all the boxes, because people are also hired on potential. And I think that's more, we are biased, and I think it's more common when you're hiring males. They are, and they are hired more on potential, but we also, women have to, we should also be hired on potential as men. And just, apply, let other people know what you're interested in. And even though, you don't tick in all the boxes, you might be the right person. And just, I find it useful to also share your ambitions with other people. Spread the word.
Yeah, tell other people what you want to accomplish.
Yes, let the customers, help you.
Oh, that's great. I love that. That's perfect. So be bold, go for it, in essence. And I love what you said about, in effect, if I'm paraphrasing, but make the case for what your potential is for that role, that you might not be a conventional choice for X role, but you can prove how your skills transfer, et cetera. That's so great. Well, thank you so much for this. It's been wonderful chatting with you. Any final thoughts before I let you go?
Well, not really, but I'm just very happy to share with you what we are doing. And even though everything sounds very easy when you talk about it like this in a short conversation, it definitely is not. There's a lot of obstacles on the way, difficult decisions, convincing, and complications. But I really, really, encourage everyone, especially companies, to find their path in being a part of the solution.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yes. And we can make it sound easy in a quick explanation, but it's very, very complicated. And by the way, I'll just share that the Carbfix people did show us the actual minerals that are created. It was really fun to feel and touch those. So thank you so much for joining us today on Electric Ladies podcast. I'm just going to call you Begga because it's easier for me. I will learn Icelandic maybe someday, but not yet, not this week. So what did you learn from Begga and what she described of Iceland's transition? Post it to us on Twitter at Joan Michelson and send us any questions there as well, and we will get answers from her. And please subscribe to our mailing list to stay abreast of our talented, amazing guests like Begga, our blogs, and career advice. I'm Joan Michelson. Thank you for joining us. See you next time.